Wow, welcome everyone. Today we have an exciting minions build for tier 100 for season 2 for the Necromancer. As you can see behind me, my friend Death has been testing different builds for the Necromancer with the latest ring. And this particular build will involve the minions using the latest auto casting ring. And here we're testing in tier 100. Now this build is extremely fun for the case that you don't have to do much. So my friend, when he was testing the build, he realized that if he was playing on lower tier dungeons or if he was just playing normally, all he has to do is move his mouse and move his character and the minions will do the work. You'll be auto-summoning the minions, auto-casting Corpse Explosion, auto-casting Corpse Tendril, and most of the time you're super durable and the game plays autoly. And because we wanted to test how far we can go, here we're looking at tier 100. And the build works perfectly. So let me fast forward a little bit. You can see that most of the time minions have no problem with most of the monsters. And auto-casting for the minions make them extremely durable. The minions will be able to summon corpses, trigger your Blight skill, trigger your Shadow Blight skill, which allows you to do more damage. And together with your abilities to generate more blood orbs, you are getting more tanky through healing and also bonus armor. Now fast forwarding a little bit to the boss. So over here for the minions build, similar to most of the Necromancer build, it is not the best for doing boss damage, but if you wanted the boss damage, I do think our latest bone build for the higher critical chance and higher critical damage may be the best. But the best thing about this build is that you don't need any uber unique items. And if I fast forward a little bit, you can see at some certain instance with the boss damage, for example over here, if you have your ultimate on cooldown, and if you cast your ultimate and also your spells, you can still deal a heavy burst amount of damage like this. But most of the time you can see the minions build will be a little short on damage against the boss. But this is a tier 100 boss, right? For most other content in the game, you can stand there and you can deal most of the damage. Now, similar to all of the videos, I'll provide you guys with this testing replay and also the gears and also choices of legendary affixes we have been using for this particular build. Now, in order to provide you guys with a better summary, so coming over to the builder's guide over here for mobilities. So let's briefly talk about the choices of items. Right away, you guys can see we're only using 2 unique items, and most of the items are crafted from legendaries. So you can be building this build without much need for the uber uniques or unique items. So we're using the auto casting ring, which will be benefiting from 3 different auto casting, from raised skeletons, from Corpse Explosion, and also Corpse Tendril. Now together with the Ring of Medellin, which allows us to have a chance of dealing burst damage and also a lot of good stats for the minions, we can be crafting this build for tier 100. So briefly having a look at the gear stats, you can see that we have been getting a lot of total armor on most of the gear pieces. And what I want to do is, you can see that during the fight after the fight, we still had over 13,000 maximum armor. And this can go even higher if you use the disobedience of the defensive aspects. But we decided to go with more healing with the blood orbs, which I'll explain. So in that sense, we can build easily into a lot of defensive capacities with most of the gears, simply because we just need a bit of minion life and also a bit of armor, a bit of defensive perks, and most of the perks were reducing damage with close, fortified, and also a lot of ways to take less damage and also gaining more maximum life. So this particular minion build will be extremely tanky with all resistance capped to 70%, lots of total armor, lots of total life, and very very durable to be enable you to be AFK in most of the dungeons and also most of the content. Now in terms of the legendaries of choice, we're getting a little bit of Blizzard and also additional damage from the Skeleton Mages. Here we'll be getting a few ways to reduce the damage with the minions with damage reduction. Now, one of the things I want to highlight over here is because we're casting Corpse Tendril automatically, having the Corpse Tendril with the Grasping Veins allows us to have higher critical chance and also higher critical damage, which is also very good if you combine with these gems to deal more critical damage with crowd control enemies. Now, as for the pens, it is optional to go with corpses providers with blood orbs. You can also go with the disobedience aspects to give you even more armor. But because we have so much armor, it's actually better to have more ways of healing ourselves and also healing the minions. Now, in terms of the additional burst damage and also summoning corpses, we can get the aspects of the Unyielding Commander, which give us more burst damage and with attack speed and also damage reduction with the minions while casting our ultimate. Now, because we're a minions build, we'll be getting 2 additional summons with the Skeleton Mages and also Skeleton Warriors. And here we're using a shield for the offhand. simply because having a shield will give us more armor, more damage reduction, and also more defensive capacities with block. Finally, we'll go with additional damage with the Shadow Blight key passive. By triggering this particular key passive, we can deal up to 180% more damage for 6 seconds, which is actually really good for the burst damage. Now in terms of the gems and also the vampiric powers, it is pretty straightforward. I won't go too much into details, but definitely check them out because we'll be using the minions and also vulnerability damage. Together with standing still providing us with barriers, this build is extremely tanky and also really fun to play. It's actually really easy to play with additional ways of getting more fortified and also reducing the ultimate cooldowns. Now briefly going through the Book of the Dead. Because we'll be going with a minions build that will require auto casting with lots of corpses, our skeleton warriors will become rapiers, which allows us to get more corpses. Our skeleton mages will be the Shadow Mage, which will help us to trigger the Shadow Blight passive and also deals more damage. Finally, we're not using the golems, which means we'll deal more critical damage and also save more active spell slots to enable this summons build without the golems. We'll be focused majority on the skeleton minions and also the Shadow Blight damage. Now briefly going through the skill trees for this build. It is pretty straightforward with most of the minion build. We started with Decompose, but it's not really needed because you're gonna see on the active skill trees we actually don't have Decompose. Now here we'll be going with 3 points into Healed Flash, which is actually really good to get more corpses. Over here 1 point will go into Blood Mist and also 1 point into Corpse Explosion. Our goal with Corpse Explosion is to make this into a darkness spells which triggers the Shadow Blight passive. This will also help us to generate more corpses with the Healed Flash. And of course over here we're getting more damage with consuming corpses, and also we'll be going to the perks for the minions with the shadow skeletons and also skeleton mages. And as standard we're going with Decryptify to lower our cooldowns and also debuff minions with Slow. By slowing minions, they will be crowd controlled to enable us to do more damage in the Paragon glyphs. Now over here we'll go with 1 point into Corpse Tendril, and also Corpse Tendril will make enemies more vulnerable. We will be using the Explode glyphs, which means we'll deal more damage against vulnerable enemies, or getting more fortified when corpses are formed. We have some spare points, so we decide to go with additional ways of crowd controlling enemies by stunning them with darkness spells. Here we'll go with Army of the Dead because this is going to be focused on minion summons. This will also give us additional corpses and also summoning warriors if they are dead. We'll go with most of the points over here for the minion summons, and finally we'll go with the Shadow Blight passive. This will enable us to trigger additional damage by triggering the passive, which is going to be very powerful for this build. Now coming over to the Paragon board. Briefly going through the Paragon board, we'll be getting additional damage from crowd control enemies. We'll be giving us more minion damage and also more minion damage reduction. A lot of points are spent into minion defensive and also offensive capacities with the mages and also the skeletons. Over here we'll also be doing more critical strike damage and also more vulnerability damage with Exploit. Finally, we'll become close damage mage because you want to stay close to your minions, and this will enable you to do more close damage. Now one of the effects I want to stress out will be on the amulet with ranks to the Halberd Commander. So if we come over to the skill tree, what I want to show you guys is, this is actually a very powerful perk. So it is gonna be, which one is it? It's over here. So over here, when you're close to your minions, they will deal up to 30% increased damage. And by getting 3 more ranks to this one, I do believe this one goes to 60% with 3 additional perks. Now coming over to our skill rotations for the minions build. It is quite straightforward. You start off with the Decryptify and you watch your minion go to action. A little bit downside with against enemies that have a chanting pin minion that reduces the damage of enemies is that you have to kill that one before you deal damage to most others. You can see the purple buffed enemies over here that is reducing enemies damage taken. Most of the time your major source of burst damage will come from using Corpse Tendril grouping enemies, because we deal more damage to crowd control enemies, and by grouping them we'll also be able to hit them with a Corpse Explosion, which triggers the Shadow Blight passive that deals tons of damage. So you can see in most of the fights, the monsters will disappear the moment Corpse Tendril gets triggered. And you can also see that because we're auto-casting Corpse Tendril and also Corpse Explosion, you don't really have to cast those spells manually unless you really want to deal a little more damage with high difficulties. With the Blood Mist, you can use this defensively if you find yourself taking too much damage over time, or just to avoid damage and also the crowd control effects. Now during this dungeon we have the Dome, which is really annoying. But you can see that even with the Dome, it takes a little more time. The minions build is pretty smooth against most of the content. Even for tier 100, we don't seem to have any problems. Now if you guys want to stay AFK, what you do is you just stand still and you can be casting your spells, or you don't have to cast your spells, because the spell itself will be auto-casted for you. For easier content, we're planning to make all AFK build. So that means that you can just stand still. You'll be auto-healing, getting barriers, and not having to do any button clicking. And you'll be auto-farming Nightmare Dungeons and also auto-farming Helltide using this method. We'll be giving you guys another updated build on this one, because I do think this one has some really good AFK potential. Now against the boss, the build will have a little bit shortfall in terms of damage, but most of the time you're very durable, and your minions tend to not die that easily against the boss. So against the boss, most of the time you want to have your burst ultimate, which allows you to gain a little bit more attack speed with your minions. And most of the time you tend to deal more damage when enemies are injured. So at the start of the fight, you might be seeing that yourself not doing that much damage to the boss. But eventually, as your damage over time kicks up, and as your more attack speed and also more buffs kicks in, you'll be doing more and more damage. Now do keep in mind guys, you are doing more damage by standing next to your minions and standing next to the boss or the enemy. So you want to make yourself in the close range vicinity of the enemies, and this will allow you to do more damage. And finally, for most rotations of the minion build, it is quite simple. You can see we're just standing here and the boss is like just hitting us and we're not taking much damage. Because you're fortified, you also have tons of barriers and also armors. You're actually a very durable necromancer summoner in terms of most content in the game. Now what I do is I'll provide you guys with a full testing replay of this minions build. It is ready for tier 100, and in the future we'll be updating this build for a fully AFK build so you can play most of the content. My friend have said he tried to AFK in the Helltide and he was able to get tons of Helltide shots just by standing there. And the little downside is you might die occasionally. We're gonna try to adjust that so that if you don't die in Helltide, you can AFK Helltide and get tons of items just by standing there.
I need more time. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I need more time. Hello.
If you guys haven't subscribed, it is a really good time to do so, because I'll be covering tons of Diablo 4 related topics and also videos and also guides. We'll be looking to the top meta builds, non-meta builds, leveling up, and also Paragon tricks. We're also looking to the latest events and also official updates and also changes to different characters and also different builds in the game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn the notification on, because a lot of you who are watching the videos have not subscribed. You can see 80% of the viewers who are watching our videos have not subscribed, so make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the latest update for Diablo 4.